The more that we can tap into our own creative power, I know that I can create any world that feels good for me and for you. And when we do that together, that's when we create these really beautiful communities where I don't need to wait on or depend on these other systems and factors to come and do the thing, because
Yes.
you don't got it, we got it.
Welcome to Empaths Anonymous,
A space for dreamers, healers, and feelers, navigating the fine line between putting yourself first and holding space for others.
If you struggle with balancing your needs while still supporting your tribe, then you're in the right place.
Welcome to the support group.
Hi, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the Empaths Anonymous podcast. I am Danny.
I'm Christina.
And today we have, as always, a fun time for you, but this is a really fun episode because we get to talk about art. We get to talk about funsies. But before we get into that, we did share a little bit about our cups with our guests. But what's in your cup today, sister?
Today I have, and you guys, I made this new discovery. I'm trying to not spend so much money going and getting coffee.
Mm-hmm.
We have been kind of like on a coffee detox of sorts. I haven't been having it as much, and I'm kind of limiting myself to, if I have one, I just have one a day.
Mm-hmm.
But I got them at Sprouts. Oh, I'm like showing this as if you can tell what it is from the cup. I got them at Sprouts. So Chamberlain coffee, cold brew pouches, and I think it came with 4 or so in a bag, and the one that I got was coconut macadamia. So it's coconut macadamia cold brew. It's just a little bit of flavoring to make you be like, oh, that's coconutty, but it's not like in your face.
It's not only coconut with a splash of coffee.
Right. Yeah, so I made the cold brew, and then I made lavender vanilla cold foam, forgetting that this was coconut macadamia coffee. So now there's just a lot of flavors in this bitch.
It's a bit of a mixture.
Yeah. Yeah, that is what's in my cup today.
And how are you showing up?
Oh.
Like that.
I just feel like the last couple weeks have just been like, I can't even process because it's just like one after the other, another one, club, another club. That's how I feel.
Oh.
And just not really getting a lot of like downtime because of not having the space and the time that I normally allow or that I normally value. I'm very much a ease and flow kind of girly. And lately just hasn't been that because it just can't be. And because of that, it also affects my mental health because my OCD is so dependent on control. So when my time doesn't feel like my time, it's hard for me to have the downtime to process. And then I end up in an OCD spiral because I haven't had the time to myself. So I came up with a new mantra or affirmation, if you will, and it's the unknown doesn't mean it's unsafe. Because in OCD, a lot of people's experience with OCD and what triggers them is the unknown, because then it sparks all the what ifs.
Yes.
OCD is the doubting disease. And so with a lot of things happening in my life, everything is a what if, a giant what if.
Yeah.
And especially like in dating right now, I'm self-sabotaging myself because I'm doubting everything.
I see.
What if this? What if that? What if we're not compatible? What if they cheat on me? What if they change their mind? What if, all the things that happen in dating all of the time when you start dating a new person and you're getting to know somebody. But I'm trying to not let it ruin things for me.
Not let it take over the good moments that you're having or the fact that you have been able to take a little bit of a break, which is something that you needed after a very stressful working environment. Right. So still acknowledging that those feelings are real, valid, and that you're allowed definitely to feel those things while still taking it day by day as things come.
Yeah, I think that I am looking back on my past relationships and it's like, why did I allow myself to enter in those relationships? And it's because I had the upper hand or I had the control. And in this situation, it's hard because it's not that anyone needs to have the upper hand or control. That's obviously why my past relationships just didn't work out because they just weren't meant to be. But I've never just allowed myself to just let the chips fall where they may. Like, I haven't allowed myself to just fall and just let the feelings be the feelings and go down the rabbit hole of romance, I guess you could say, with somebody.
Yeah.
There's always like a reservation, or I'm holding something back. And this person told me that. They're like, I feel like up until now, it feels like you've had a wall up. I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
When you've had a lot of negative experiences dating, it's hard to not. When you've been cheated on, when you've, dated somebody who has substance abuse problems or things like that, things just never work out for you. It's like you always get to the 3-month hump and then it fails. So it's like, of course I have a guard up.
Right.
I'm trying to save or protect the best parts of myself, because if I kept giving that to every single person that I start talking to,
it's like depletion after depletion after depletion, and then you're left with
so I think that I hit a
absolute
breakthrough with this person a little bit, but I'm like, well, what if I just allowed myself to play into the feeling more, and instead of stopping it before it can begin through all of my what ifs,
right,
I can just allow myself to experience it. And then if it still doesn't work out, then it's okay. But at least I allowed myself.
Yeah. Almost like allow yourself to tell you the truth about what it is that's happening.
Right.
Instead of what could happen in 3 months from now.
Yeah. Because I think that I took a break from dating for a while when I moved here, obviously, because I didn't know anybody. But I needed a couple years of finding myself, rebuilding, working on my mental health. So not that I want to be on a timeline, but I have just accepted, or I guess my intention was that the next person that I date or enter into something serious and long term with will be somebody that I see myself having a life with.
Right.
And so I think that that also has put pressure on it, because now I'm like analyzing every person I date as, can I be with them for real?
Yeah.
Past this just dating stage.
Yes.
And it's a really weird dance of having to be in the moment and also think about the future at the same time with somebody.
Yes.
So it takes time, and that's the hard part of, I might continue dating this person and, date them for another 6 months, year, 2 years, and it may not work out.
Yeah.
That feeling of wasting time. But I think even so far, this relationship, not saying like I'm in a relationship, but having a relationship with this person, right, has already taught me a lot. So I'm like, well, that can't be wasted time then, if I'm learning things, if I'm learning new things about myself and about how I give love and receive love, and I'm like kind of working past my blockages.
Yeah.
So long story short,
honestly, I'm like a firm believer in, I mean, even if you make like really, really poor life choices, I don't really feel like anyone can actually waste time if you take what it is that you learned from that moment and apply it to anything in your life into the future.
Right.
Or even in that moment, if you're learning how to treat people a certain way or how to treat yourself a certain way, I really don't think a lot of things are not a waste of time. You just have to shift your perspective around it. And my therapist told me this. She was like, a lot of the time it's a struggle to forgive yourself because of this idea that you've wasted time. And that's just simply not true.
Yeah.
It's not wasted time. It taught you a lot about people. It taught you a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Anything that can teach you anything is never a waste of time.
Right.
So, girlie, if you're out there thinking like whatever it is you're doing right now, I would say even if you're struggling with your mental health and you have those days where you're just like, today is not my day, that is still not a waste of time because you're honoring what it is that you're feeling, and you have to be able to do that, and still you've learned at the end of the day. So
yeah,
for me, a really bland iced coffee is just not for me today. It's from home and I'm just not feeling it.
It matches your shirt though.
I do tend to match, almost as if like I have a favorite color or something. And just chilling. I have been feeling slightly stressed about school, which is frustrating because I had gotten to a point where I thought I was like at a good pace, and now I am actually behind. So it's not even like the feeling of being behind. I'm actually. So I do have a lot to catch up on, but I'm really hoping to hunker down. I was like sick for a little bit too, so that played into it. We've been really busy with the podcast, which I love.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it does
just
take
even
time
busy
out of the day.
doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like living.
Yes, living life.
We had that cooking class. We've been doing stuff with your daughter.
Yeah. pumpkin patches.
Yeah, what else? I just feel like we've just been busy doing things.
Yeah, we've been out. I just lots of stuff happening, and so I just have felt like a lot of, which have been priorities, of course, have just taken over other priorities in my life. So I got to get back to it. I'm really near the end, but yeah, I'm happy to have the conversation that we are having today with our guest. And that's really it in my cup. No real news on the dating front for me. I'm kind of just whatever. I did download like 5 apps and then deleted them all a couple days after. Did y'all know eHarmony charges buku bucks? Remember eHarmony? That's like the OG,
they were like one of the first
like
ones,
Match.com.
Yeah.
They still don't have an app. It's still all on a browser. I'm like, okay, I get it, traditional, but also inconvenience. They wanted to charge me $200 for the year. It's a very expensive service. I did not realize that. Only to get a preview of a message where someone was like, nice lips. I'm like, oh, okay. So these are just people who are the same as everyone else on the other apps, but they just have money. What kind of greeting is that?
Nice lips. Did you pay it?
No, absolutely
Okay,
not. In fact, I deleted my account. eHarmony, sorry.
Honestly,
$200 for the year. It was like they were running some kind of crazy 50% off premium membership, whatever. And so when I went to go like pretend I was going to put it on my PayPal credit, it broke it down to the fine print, $100 today and then 4 payments of an extra $100. I'm like, that makes up a lot more money than what you just told me on the last page.
No.
It was horrible. But yeah, I think
note,
just like trying to figure it out for myself.
A fun experiment for the podcast would be maybe we split up the apps.
Yeah.
And so
an app review.
I get on 4 and you get on 4, and then we like, just fuck around, have conversations with people, and then get on the podcast and give reviews. This is what we like about this one. This is what we don't. These were our experiences. These were some funny stories. Let us know if you would like that.
A dating app review. Yeah, and I'm on a couple of different ones because once you start clicking them from your Instagram ads, they become out the woodworks with all these different like dating apps.
Yeah.
And so I did do Bumble, but I just haven't created my profile yet. And then I did another Latino app, which is called Soltera.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are a lot of them. I have no idea. There are a lot of are behind a paywall. The membership is just behind a paywall, so you can't see your matches, you can't see your messages unless you pay. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just going to go back out into the wild. I'm just going to go start doing more things, now that I have the capability of doing that.
Meet somebody at ceramics. That's so romantic.
It is, but they're just not there, baby.
No.
It's not them. Anyway, yeah, that's it. But I really wanted to not make that so long so we could really get into our guest because she is absolutely fantastic and fun and fancy free.
Yeah, I yapped for a long time. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But yeah, without further ado, we hope that you guys enjoy our convo with Naomi Fierro
Pẽna. See you on the other side, bitch.
I have another guest on the podcast. Her name is Naomi Fierro Pẽna, a soulful artist, engaging facilitator, and community creator. She specializes in creating artful wellness spaces for BIPOC adults. After 10 years of teaching, she opened her own business, That Art Party, art and play for BIPOC adults, as a means of healing and liberation for communities of color. When she is not in Jefa mode, you can find Naomi dancing, obsessing over a new creative hobby, or resting. Welcome to the podcast, Naomi.
Yay, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
We're so excited to have you. We love talking about creative things and art and playing. So we felt like this was going to be the perfect little collaboration. So we do like to start every episode by asking our guests what's in your cup. So if you have anything in your physical cup today, what you're drinking, and then how you're showing up today on the podcast.
Yeah, I brought out my really special cup. I love these. A friend of mine got them.
Love.
Yeah, it was like they come in all kinds of colors. And today I'm just drinking a little sparkling water. It's lemon sorbet flavored.
Yum.
Yeah. So that's what I'm literally drinking in my cup. And yeah, just how I'm showing up today, I think excited, a little nervous, also a little tired, and again, wishing that it was windy and gray outside, and yet it's sunny. So here we are.
Right, very out of character for Northern California right now.
Yes.
Exactly.
We'll love to hear that.
We're huge sparkling water girlies too. We've kind of started making up our own little like mocktails and things like this to prevent ourselves from buying stuff that's just already pre-made. And we usually save a little money on it. So we wanted to start off by asking you our first question that I guess the first thing would be an admiration. So we admire so much that you chose a career change when that's typically a huge risk to take for anyone. So was there anything about your teaching career when you were still teaching that inspired you to start that art party?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I appreciate the question because it is an important moment to see like where I started and how far I've
Mm-hmm.
come, right, in the journey.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I also ran into a former student of mine's mother
Okay.
who told me that he's 21 now. I'm like, excuse
Wow.
me? I know. I was like,
You're like,
what?
impossible. I'm 21.
Right. I was like, I'm sorry. How is my student older than me? What?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just a baby.
Right. Like, no. And she told me that he was studying electrical engineering. And I'm like,
Wow.
Diego, go off. Yes. I
Yes.
love that. But yeah, so how I was informed by my teaching career, I started off teaching in Title One schools in my neighborhood. And I'm originally from San Francisco,
Mhm.
from the Mission District in San Francisco.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, yeah, if you know something about it, it's very Latino, very immigrant. And for me, has always been the center of culture and art and healing. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also become the center of what's been called hyper gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to go back and teach was really kind of a pivotal moment for me. I was teaching young brown and black kids, and it was a very financially under resourced school.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And what I noticed about that time in my life was how we were training our young people to memorize, to be compliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
To conform and to shape their personalities in a way that I just need you to regurgitate and to repeat after me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that juxtaposed with the end of my teaching career, where I was teaching at a very elite high school, also in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an arts based private school where at that time the tuition was over $50,000 a year.
Okay.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
That's more than I spent on my entire 4-year college.
Okay.
Right, right. And obviously it was a predominantly white institution. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I got to see young people do and be there was completely different, right? The concept of a free period to really actually enjoy and to play and to make art and not to spend studying was valued. And essentially what I saw is like we were teaching young white kids to be in our culture, right?
Mm.
We were studying art that looked like me, that looked like you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, what is it that we have taken that joy, that leisure, that play away from the young people that look like me and you?
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying only if you have money, only if you have time can you access that. And then art and play is valued as creativity, innovation, genius, right? And
Right.
I'm like, our young people are genius. We should get to enjoy that and relish in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kind of really distinct side by side in my short career, I was like, oh, no, I want
Right.
spaces for us to be able to relish and play
Mm-hmm.
and to enjoy that. I think, especially in terms of our own mental and spiritual health.
Yes. Yeah, that's so inspiring. I'm kind of in the thick of that right now where I'm like, ugh, I know that I'm like helping the students that I'm involved with in a certain capacity because I work with multilingual learners. So anywhere from Arabic to Korean at one point, it's like a beautiful group of students. Then now they're trying to adopt this same, like what you're saying, memorization, regurgitation. Just show me that you know it, right? Show me that you know it. And I'm like, they have to show me that they know it in English. They can't even show me that they know it in their native language. So that adds on an extra layer. And I'm just seeing, it's 9 weeks into the regular school year, and it's just like some of these kids are fading. And I'm like, no, hold on for me, please. It's like, we just got here. But I'm noticing that. And as much as there are a lot more resources, especially in the area that we're in, we do get more funding, and we got more funding to add on more of my position. And that's been very helpful. But at the same time, I'm like, well, there is no play. Their free period is homework because they don't have the opportunity to do that at home. So now they have nowhere to get that outlet. It's why one of my students draws in every single period in her class. And while I hate to tell her stop, I sometimes have to tell her to stop because there's content that's getting missed there. So it's like a struggle because you want them to be able to have that creative outlet. But if it's taking place of actual content that they need to be learning, where do I draw the line in my personal stance, right? How much of my personal belief do I bring into my position? Because if I allowed all of it, then yeah, I wouldn't be following the rules. I would be like, yes, girl, draw. I'm like, I'll get you the notes later. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it because I've had a very different relationship with school myself. Wasn't ever like I didn't like school. I very much enjoyed school, but I do realize it's not for everybody also. So, we do love that you kind of took what you learned from that and you saw that those spaces really needed that. It's like you saw these, the PWI, right? That institution studying all the things that were of another culture. Mm-hmm. And those students of those cultures have no idea what those things are. And you're like, oh, there's a huge disconnect happening just because someone doesn't have $50,000 a year to spend on a private education. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's like we're ingrained, assimilate, sit in a desk and memorize and regurgitate and learn the way that our American school system has deemed as the right way to learn. Mm-hmm. And then on the opposite sides, it's like things are being taken from our cultures that were supportive for our people in the first place. But then we're told that to be an American and to fit into our current society, we just have to change that. But on the other hand, we liked what you guys were doing, so we're just going to take it for ourselves and give it to people who have the money and the access.
Hello?
Hello. I was like, neocolonization again. Okay. Yeah,
right.
No, for sure. I didn't like being part of a system that was teaching young brown and black bodies to be workers, right? Like to be wheels in a cog. While, like I said, at the end of my career, I was then part of this system that was like, and we're teaching that white folks that it's okay to co-opt our culture, right? Mm-hmm. Like we were literally teaching them to study our culture, right? And so it's like, I can't be part of that. And so what does my activism then look like outside of the system?
Right. Yeah. Yes. And even just like a quick note, because you said that you're from the Mission District. We went to the Cheech Museum, which is in Riverside, and the artist who was on display being highlighted when we went was Yolanda Lopez. And so we got to learn a lot about her activism and her art in the Mission District, which I'm not a California native. I've lived here for coming up on 2 years. So I wasn't even aware at all. And we're wanting to go to San Francisco and do a little trip. So I'm so excited, but it's exciting to hear that you're from there because I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, we have a couple of things like check off, like, okay, we're going to go to San Francisco and we're going to hit this. We're going to hit this. I've been wanting to take her for like literal years, even before she moved. I've only ever been once and I was really young. So I would love to experience it differently as an adult. I remember absolutely loving the city when I think I was like 13 or 14. I was very young. Yeah. So I would love to go back and experience it differently for sure. It's coming up. I know it is.
Yay. Yes. Let me know. I'm happy to take y'all around, show you where to go.
Yeah. That'd be so fun. And if you have a class, we would love to join the class too while we're there. That'd be so great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, done and done.
Right. But as perfections in recovery, as we call ourselves, we often feel overwhelmed with the idea to start at perfect. How do you encourage guests of that art party that attend your events to tap into their imaginations?
Oh my gosh, yes. This is something that is so common. And again, I don't ever blame us for having that habituated and embodied, right? We have been conditioned to get things right and to do this one way, right? Those are all tenets of white supremacy culture that we are all have been socialized in, right? And so, I mean, there's a couple of different ways I kind of guide us into that. And I think the first being that our approach to play and through art is play. Our approach to art is play. And so, what I mean by that is, I always start and have people share when was the last time you played? And I have folks describe that. And immediately, people are smiling, they're laughing, their body language changes. And it's again an embodied experience of like, oh, the last time I played, I actually felt free. I felt a sense of just like freedom and stopping time and not like I was overly conscious of what I was doing in the moment, right? And so once we have that feeling in our bodies, that's then what I ask us to continue to do in our art making. I always say that it's just play, right? Like we're not over here trying to make some sort of a like masterpiece because in reality, who decides what a masterpiece is? And then two, I had a teacher, a dance teacher, who used to tell us, make it ugly. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, because so I'm a dancer by training, and so much of my like experience, right? You have to be beautiful as a dancer. And so this idea of like make it ugly, make bad art, get messy, right? Like it's just that level of permission to play, to like literally color outside the lines. And it's not about a specific outcome, it's about honoring the process and feeling into the materials. I'm like, what does this material feel like in your hands? Right? Just take a second to like tap into that sensation. And so it really is a blend of mindfulness and art making. And so I think those are things that I like to embed in our experiences together. And it's funny because you'll hear people that have attended, they'll tell each other from across the room, they'll be like, it's just play. We're letting
That's
go of
cute.
perfectionism, you
Yeah.
know? And so it becomes this really supportive environment where people are like, yeah, cool. It's not about the final product, it's about the process. And
Right.
so I think that really helps us let go of this idea that we have to have some perfect product at the end.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the hardest things for us both. And I think we deal with our perfectionism qualities and intricacies very differently, but they still exist very much. It's why I think the podcast functions the way that it does. Because it's like if one thing we can agree on is that we're very like strict about certain things when it comes to creating for this space. I would say like whenever we're having a conversation about it and how this is not going that way, this is not going that way, it's like, relax.
Right. Return to the fun.
Return to the fun. We did this for a very specific purpose as an outlet to create the community and the friendships and connections that we've been able to so far, which has been the most fun, I think, for us, is to be able to connect with so many different personalities and learn so many different things. Both of us are lifelong learners. So I would love to be in that space. I think, could you remind us did you attend the self-love jam or did you provide something for?
I was just a guest that
Okay.
day.
Okay, so you got to enjoy.
Yeah. Yes, I did,
Good.
which was so beautiful. I was like, wow, it's something different to be on the receiving end, right? Of
Right.
creativity as a form of self care. Because, I mean, this is a whole other topic, but like turning this passion into a business can then take from the actual
Exactly.
fun
Yep.
of the,
Yes.
you know? And so, yeah, I was really fortunate to just experience the event.
Even at the event, I was catching myself because we were painting these picture frames, right? And I had a vision in my mind that I wanted it to be like an ombre sunset vibe. And it just wasn't. I didn't have the right tools. I didn't have the right brushes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't even what I want. I'm going to have to take it home and redo it and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, it's fine. We're just enjoying our time here. I'm like, I know, but now I'm not going to use it because it's not 100% what I wanted it to be. But just this idea of being more in the moment, as you said, the mindfulness of it, noticing the colors and how they mix together and the materials that are being used, and just appreciating that, and the almost the gateway that it provides to conversation. Because when you're distracted with doing art, playing, creating, you're able then to talk to people around you, and it's not so scary. It removes that barrier.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I mean, I always talk about the concept of parallel play in that, right? Like we can be sitting across from each other and we're both creating. And even without words, we're still playing together, right? And it, to your point, it takes that one layer of like anxiety away from the moment, because it could be really anxiety provoking to sit across from someone and be like, okay, what am I going to say to this person now? And, you know, all of the things that can happen. And so it's actually, for me, it feels very culturally responsive, but also trauma informed to be creating and doing so in a way where we're not trying to make something perfect, but creating together. And that's how we connect. And so, yeah, I love that.
It was definitely fun to get there, and even us showing up late, I feel like we were able to enjoy like most of it, and got to hear Brittany MC, and it was such a good time. So we honestly can't wait to the next one. Let's just hope it is done at a plant shop, because I already restrained myself once, and I'm not gonna be able to do it again.
I don't know how many times we can do that.
No, I can't. I'm not gonna be able to. I'm telling you right now. So, as we mentioned earlier, we do talk about art a lot, and we love to showcase BIPOC artists on our podcast, on our gallery wall. But when we do have people, especially people of color, that submit their work, we like to showcase it for a couple of episodes. So, we found that curating our wall, as you can see, we have lots of different stuff going on here. We found it to be specific to us as the podcast, our personalities individually, and it was very therapeutic looking through things and picking out what we wanted. So, as far as it relates to that art party, can you speak to how art plays a role in our emotional well-being?
Totally, totally. It's just like eye candy, and it just is so exciting just to be in a space that makes you feel right, like good and seen and alive. That's what I think color and shape and texture do for me. But anywho, that's an aside. I think the way that I talk about art really playing a role in our mental health. One, it allows us to feel, and it allows us to feel without putting a word to it. Like I actually used to have a really hard time when a therapist would ask me how I feel, or just the question of, so how do you feel? Trying to find a specific word that matches the exact feeling was actually really challenging for me. And so the fact that without words, many times, art can grab something in you that really allows you to feel in an embodied way, right? Like you feel it here first, you feel it in your breath, you feel it in your posture. That is, I think, something so beautiful and magical that art has the power to do. So I think that's number one. Number two, it allows us to reduce our stress. You don't even have to be making art for you to feel calmed by being in the presence of art.
Right.
And so I think that's also a huge component of how art is important to our mental health. The third thing I talk about is that it's actually really good for our brain function. Taking in art and making art really produce serotonin and activate the reward centers of our brain. And so I think that is really powerful too. And again, it's not about the quality of art that you're making, it's just the experience of being present. It allows us to focus. I think something that happens over and over and over again at all of my play dates or events is that we'll start and an hour, hour 15 go by, and people are like, what? Whoa, where did the time go? Right? Because they were, I think, so enveloped and focused in the actual art making. And so I think, especially in a time where there can be so many stimuli that are asking for our attention, it really feels kind of luxurious to just be immersed and focused on one thing, you
Yeah.
know? So I think it does that. And then the last two things I'll say is one, it gives us permission to be messy. And I always, always, always say that. I always share this that when I was little, my mom used to ask me to color in the lines. She's like, "Why are you coloring all over? You have to color in one direction." And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect as a 5-year-old coloring. Whoa, like
Right.
that's I think the implicit messages. And so I always tell people there's no right, wrong way, right, to be and to experience your art. Please make it messy. Please don't have a direction for where you want to go. Just be in this moment. And so, especially when there are so many places that ask us to show up perfectly, this is, I think, the one space where we don't have to. And I think people feel safe enough not to have to show up perfectly. And then the last thing I think I've mentioned this too is that it pauses time. That is a magical gift that I'm just like, wow, the fact that I'm not consciously like, oh my gosh, I have only 5 more minutes and I have to do this thing, right? Like that ability to exist outside of time is, I don't know how many other places and spaces can do that. And so I think that also really does wonders for your mental and emotional health.
Right.
So true.
Yeah, just the immersiveness, as you're saying, of art in general is something that draws me to it because it can be a mindfulness practice. It can be, I view art as a meditation, going
Mm-hmm.
to a art museum and just having the quiet and just observing what somebody else has made and maybe coming up with your own meaning to it. I think that that's very therapeutic. So I definitely agree. I can see a lot of the different ties to your mental health. Kind of going off of that a little bit, how does playing, specifically as BIPOC adults, inspire self care for ourselves in our communities?
Yeah, I think it's one really similar. I think they're really similar, right? So I
Yeah.
think what I described, I think the differences that I will highlight is that I think play really encourages learning and innovation. And if you think, I don't know how many of you have had this experience before, but the idea of gamified learning or, right, like learning some skill
Yeah.
through a game. I don't know. I think randomly what I'm thinking about right now is like Mavis Beacon, like learning how to type with
Oh yeah,
Mavis, you know?
love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was a computer game, like a typing. I don't know. It was just a
Oh,
California thing.
I've never heard
Is
of that
it?
one.
Yeah, because I
Oh.
mentioned her before, and they're like, "Who is she?" And I'm like, so
What?
confused because she literally taught me how to type. She was like
Oh,
this beautiful black lady, and she was dressed up in her power suit, and she was like,
Yes, what?
"And we're gonna type and make sure you have your cover." I had to have a cover on the skin on the keyboard,
Oh.
like you couldn't see the letters. So you had to learn
oh,
how to
yep.
type with the home keys and all that. You had games, and you would have to type the letters in the bubbles and things like
Okay.
that. Yeah, for
Okay.
those of you who don't know who Mavis Beacon is, she's an icon, a legend, and a typing teaching queen.
I grew up in the Midwest, so I don't know about all of that, but she sounds
It
wonderful.
was so fun. Yeah, it was like back in the day when you used to have to take like a computer class as an
Mm,
elective.
yeah.
And you
Mhm,
used to have to
mhm.
learn like how to use PowerPoint, how to use Word, and all
Right.
that,
All of
like
that.
the
Yeah.
fun
I
stuff.
mean, all the point being, right, that like
Yes.
learning through a fun experience, a joyful experience, right? That's playful. And
Right.
it's something that will cement whatever skill for you. And so play, I think one leads to really important innovation and learning. And then two, I think it also really allows us to tap into our inner child. And I think this is particularly important for BIPOC adults
Mm-hmm.
because of our experience as racialized beings in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where we have a history of racism amongst
Right.
all of the other isms that
Hmm.
Yes.
exist, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, for me specifically, I don't remember playing as a child, right? Like my childhood was very much like taking care of my brother, taking care of my dad, then taking care of my grandma, just lots of caretaking from a very young age. And I would say that's not an uncommon experience for us. And so being able to reclaim pieces of what could feel like a carefree childhood and doing that through play as an adult, I think is also really healing. And again, I think play allows us to feel really free and to make mistakes and to get messy. And when in what I call like in the outside world, right? Mistakes or being messy or not being perfect can often lead to violence against us as people of color. And so when we have space where we can like literally let our hair down, literally just breathe and not have a direction and make mistakes if you want to without any serious harmful consequence to you, that's actually really empowering. And it changes the way that you think about yourself and your own self perception. And so I find it to be like the more that we engage in play and art making as a creative ritual, the more that we get to really harness our innate creative power and really create realities that we feel free in.
Yeah, that
That's so
feeling of
true.
always having to be in line.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in a lot of my experiences growing up in the Midwest in primarily like white communities is always noticing, well, how come that person can behave that way? And it's tolerated. But if I were to behave that way, it would be a trip to the principal's office or being talked to by my soccer coach or whatever it may be. And so always feeling like, well, I'm so terrified of losing that perception of safety or getting in trouble that I'm just going to make sure everything is always in line, all my ducks are in a row at all times. So I think that from early ages, which I think is very common for people who look like us, we lose that play faster. Like you said, the caretaking and all these different ways where we have to show up in society a certain way is like we lose a little bit of that right to be a child for as long as possible. So playing really brings that back for me, and it almost, like you said, heals my inner child in a way of you didn't get to do this, or you were put down for enjoying this, or told that that's not for you, or you're too old for that, or whatever it was, and now I can enjoy it in the peace of my own home without anybody telling me what their expectations are on me. It's very healing for my inner child.
Mm-hmm.
Almost
Mm-hmm.
like a coping mechanism, survival strategy. Like, I need to ensure that I'm showing up in a very specific way, behaving in a specific way, especially when it's outward in front of other people. Like what you said, who could actually get you in trouble, maybe with an administrator, and then at home with your parents because you saw a behavior that was shrugged off. But then when you exhibited that same behavior, it was not the same reaction. Right. I remember specifically struggling in 5th grade when I moved schools, actually, because I was just on a different, I don't know what the math they were teaching at my old school, but it wasn't the 5th grade math I came to in Temecula, because that was different. I was just so unfamiliar, and I could just tell that my teacher was getting very, very frustrated with me and my inability to comprehend. It was fractions. Fractions are hard. So, it just wasn't a good experience for me. It was like my first time being one-on-one with that teacher, and it just felt like a cold experience. And so I think that in and of itself is, okay, I have to know so many things. I have to know more things than my peers. I have to be on my A+ game all the time just to prove that I'm worthy to be surrounded by the peers in my class. I always have to be on. It's like, I don't have that luxury to relax. I don't have that luxury to sit down and really be in my childhood. I've got responsibilities. That kind of took over.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other piece too that I was reminded of as you both were sharing, I think, was the idea that like whatever we were doing with our time had to be functional in some way.
Yes.
Right? Like if we were going to do something, if we were going to invest our time in some way, it had to be for a very productive purpose, and being taught that from a very young age. And also, I think to your point earlier about art making, and when you were saying, you were talking about your frame not being the thing that you were going to use anymore.
Right.
And so it almost devaluing the experience, because you're like, well, it doesn't have a functional purpose anymore. And so that's something I still will struggle with, and will have to be like, no, Naomi, it's okay. You made this, whatever it was, from clay, and it was about the experience, not necessarily the fact that I can use this as an ashtray tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
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 And so, I think the other piece of that too was not being wasteful, or yeah, I think that's another big one that I think about a lot too when making art and using supplies. It's interesting, people will come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to waste anything, so here you go." And I'm like, "No, waste it. Use it. Even if you have the inkling that you want to use it, use the whole thing, because I want us to feel so entitled to the materials, because
Right.
how often do we get to be in a space where we feel so entitled,
Right. That's
Right.
very true.
Not
Especially with
often.
this idea that we have to share everything we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have to share everything. Oh, let me not use all of this just in case someone else wants to use it without ever having been approached, or
Right.
no one asked me if they could use it. It can be fully
Right.
mine, but just this mindset or the frame of mind that you're in when you're actually trying to be in this space, you're still so hyper aware, so cognizant of everyone else's feelings and wants around you that you're never really able to be in it. I had an art class in 7th grade and I loved my teacher. Our teachers are
They're always the
they're
best.
so fun. And she dressed fantastic, of course. But we had this like really strange inside joke that when it turned 11:11, we would say hi to her grandma. Just like the quirkiest little, because she would I guess her grandma would always see that time. And so now, of course, us being like really super into numerology, we're like, I just saw 222 on her phone. I was going to say it out loud. And I'm like, don't say that.
Just say it.
Yeah. But it was
Why
such a
not?
fun time. We got to play with all these different materials and things like this. And I do remember like that being my one class where I could be like, oh, yes, like I get to be free in this and doing things, but still with a very specific purpose. Like we did a paper mache, like letters. And so I just did the first initial of my first name, and I still had to make it so that it matched my bedroom, though. At the time, it was stars and moons. And so it had to be that, because then it wouldn't be cohesive with my bedroom. So just things like that, but it still allowed me to have fun with it. And so as far as when you do throw the parties, what is your favorite story so far that you've had personally when you're throwing the party? And then have you had any of your attendees share how either meaningful or impactful or I suppose life-changing the experience was for them?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so many. It was like
That's
really
good.
hard to
Yeah.
choose, which ones to share. I think there are two that are just like top of mind right now. So one, I like to call this person like the creative that's burnt out, right? That's also very real. And
Mhm.
so this person has shared with me and with other people before too. They're like, whenever I see her in person, she'll be like, "This is my creative madrina," and just know that she's the creative madrina for many of us out here in the community. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so sweet." That's like creative godmother
Mhm.
for anybody that wanted a little translation. Pero she will say, oh, frequently she'll be like, I worked at an arts high school. I am a creative in my profession. And yet somehow the permission that Naomi gives me to not be perfect, to just honor the process, to play, to be messy. I don't know what it is, but the fact that Naomi has given that permission makes me feel like I actually do have the permission to do that. And
Mhm.
so that is always something that I really value, because I mean, this person is a formidable creative in her own right.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's very human. it's very human. And I think that's what I love about it, is that no matter where you are in your career, no matter what stage you are in your life, we still need each other. And there is something so important about being able to be mirrors for each other, and to hold each other's hand in the process, and like to be messy and make mistakes together and know that I'm going to still love you after. That, I think, is why that particular kind of sharing always resonates with me. And then the other one that I love that I got recently, this is like your quintessential high performing woman of color who has taken care of everybody, always had the answers to everything, was like the end all be all point person. You know what I mean? Never can turn off, right? This
I know
person.
that.
Yes, I know
Because I am that.
Yeah, we know her.
You know?
Very familiar.
Yes. So at the end of one of, it was a virtual doodle date, and she, at the very end of this, goes, I just needed to be the first one to share because, as someone who has tried every single meditative practice, journaling, yoga, this, that, XYZ, right? She goes down the list of all the things that she's tried. And she goes, nothing has been able to do what this just did for me.
Wow.
The fact that there was nothing going on up here, the fact that I wasn't going through the to-do list, or the fact that I could actually really just empty out all of the peripheral kind of ongoing background noise and thoughts and just doodle.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's incredible. Nothing has been able to do that for me. And that's something I was like, wow, I couldn't have even set her up to say that if I tried, right? That was
Right.
just a
Right.
very organic
Yeah.
moment. And I'm like, those are the reasons, those are the reasons why I do what I do. And that particular group where that woman had shared that she like really felt called by doodling, that group went on a retreat, I think 2 weeks after. And the director of the group was like, literally every person on this retreat has pulled out their journal, has been doodling at some point or another. Like, the way that is the go to mechanism now to relax, or like to de stress or unwind.
Right.
And I'm like,
Yay.
Right. You're like, that's all I could
Yeah.
do. My work
yeah.
here
Mic
is
drop.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that specific explanation about getting lost in something and turning your brain off is so hard. It's so hard to do. Couple that with having to kind of reteach yourself and relearn things that you learned as a child that were not really meant for you in your childhood and more were adult themes that could have been pushed until later on in life. I do feel that way. I've taken 2 ceramics classes. And when I'm there, I'm like, whatever. First of all, I love that they don't tell you to make any type of piece. They say, whatever it becomes is what it is. And I'm like, perfect. Because I'm not going to be able to make a vase that skinny. I'm not doing it. And so far, I've created a couple of things that, like, it's been nice to find use out of them, but I didn't necessarily create them to have a purpose. So that's when I'm kind of like, I'm talking to my clay. And because I have to talk to my clay, nothing else gets let in because I have to actually talk to her nice, like she's very particular. It's like
Yeah.
one wrong push, one wrong like thing, and it's all wonky. And then I have to call the instructor over, and it's a really good time. And usually, this is not surprising news, I'm the last one in the studio, where I feel like everyone else is kind of like, okay, I did my 2 pieces, I'm leaving. And I'm like, y'all, we have 2 hours in here. Don't you want to
Right.
make use of the 2 hours and lean into the process? So I've been noticing that about like my external environment and being really able to tap back into that myself. So far, we've got an air plant holder and kind of like a catch-all situation. Like keys go in there.
Keys and stuff. Yeah. And I'm proud of her because we're like a whole squad up in this bitch,
Yes.
We roll deep. Like when we show up to an event, we're all showing up.
Yes.
And both times she's been like, I'm doing this by myself. So I know that you guys would love to do this, but this time it's just me.
So yeah, I have to do so because I would really allow myself to get back to this place where I have to have someone with me all the time. And that just feeds into the insecurities that I've worked on a lot in myself. And so I have to remind myself a lot that I used to be perfectly fine hanging out with me And so doing those things by myself, I'm like, yes, welcome back to myself. And I just get to have these full 2 hours because I'm using them because it costs $50. That I am there and I'm present and I'm going to come out with something, and I don't really care what the something is. It's just about being there.
Amazing. Oh, we love that. What a gift.
Good time.
So, going off script a little bit here, but I just love hearing people's stories. And you said you're from the Mission District. What was your experience growing up there as a queer Latina?
Ooh, yeah. I'm like, well, there's so many layers to that question.
Yeah, however you want to answer is
Yeah, I'm
completely
like, where do
fine.
I start? What do I want to say about that exactly? I think there are so many really beautiful things about it. So, first and foremost, I grew up the first 5 years with my abuelita, who owned her own alterations shop. She was the person that made the charro, the mariachi outfits, right? It was that deep. I mean, it then became everybody's alteration on their jeans or their pants or whatever. But I was like, that was the level. So one, I grew up speaking Spanish all of the time. Two, everybody in the neighborhood knew my grandma. And then by association that knew me, right? I was her first nieta. Everybody, everybody was like bringing me little things when they went to go pick up their pants or whatever it was, right? And so it felt like family, right? It was just community, family all the time. And she really was like the center of our family, right? She had 5 children, my mom being her middle daughter. And so I got to see my tias and my tios all the time, right? Because they always kind of landed back in her space. And so I think that was like a really beautiful memory. I have memories like when the paletero would come by, like he always knew to stop at the corner and like that I would, right?
Right. You were there.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And so I think that was really special. I still remember, I think getting older, I remember not getting in literal fights, but there would be certain people that would come, and I'm just gonna say they were English only speaking, and then would be getting mad at my grandma for not having X, Y, or Z ready on time. And I remember profusely defending her and being like, well, if you don't like it, you can leave. And I was little.
Period.
Yes.
Find another shop.
Right. I was like, take your ass somewhere else, okay? That's going to charge you double the price, but get out of here with that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it was like a little bit of everything growing up, I think, in that way. But I grew up dancing in Carnaval every single year. My tia is a dancer, and she's who I have studied with and traveled with and performed with. And I think that was like the impetus for me feeling like art is actually a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And it not only connects me to myself and my body in this present moment in a way that feels like I am fully in my body, but it also felt like a very spiritual connection to ancestors. And I mean, like, I have danced barefoot my entire life. So, like, that level of grounding and embodiment. And I don't know, it was just always this idea that I didn't need anything else, right? Like, I didn't need anything else but to just show up to really feel connected and grounded. And it was just enough in that moment. Yeah, I remember taking the bus home and watching all of the murals that were bright and in color and looked like me. And not only were they joyful, but they also had a very particular political bend, right? Like, it was really kind of ingenious activism, right? Where we could talk about very political things and, like, for immigrants' rights, right? Like, just on a basic level. And that was all communicated, no words, just a mural, right? And the number of people that would see that on their way home from work or to school or what have you. Like, yeah, I definitely had a really beautiful upbringing in that sense. I mean, the mission is very different today. And in a lot of ways, I think it feels heartbreaking. Like so many of the businesses that I grew up with are no longer there. Very white. And I'm like, wow, I remember when y'all used to be scared to come over here. I was just like, wow, and now you're, oh, okay. But yeah, I think I feel really lucky to have been raised in that space when I was.
Yeah. Gentrification is really heartbreaking, and kind of going back to like the beginning when we were talking about schools, it's like our communities were pushed into these pockets. We don't really want to be here, so you guys can go and inhabit this space, right? And then we take the time and the care, and it blooms and it blossoms, and our communities create these amazing joy-filled spaces. And then they're like, oh, well, actually, we want to live there now, so we're going to make it so expensive so that you can't, and then push you all out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so, well, then where is good enough for us?
Right.
If you're basically giving us the scraps, and then when those scraps become a garden, then all of a sudden you want it back.
Yeah.
That's tough. Insecure, the show, which I could watch it over and over and over again. Huge Issa Rae fans over here. She did a really good job. It was over several episodes over all the seasons because she integrated Inglewood and Leimert Park and just a lot of South Central LA into the show itself, and actually literally showcased real places where it was a conversation that happened a lot between the characters, but it was a very real conversation that was happening in real life where didn't this used to be so and so's place, or didn't this used to be this, or there was a white lady standing out of somewhere in Leimert Park, and she was like handing out these flyers, and Issa Rae looked at her like, what are you doing here? This used to be something else, right? And so I really admire people like her who use her platform to keep those spots open and alive and thriving. I think she's part owner in Hilltop Coffee, which now has like several locations, and she's kept the one in Inglewood, and it's remained Black owned, and it's going to stay that way. And so I just love that we can have those voices still present and those things being talked about on a show that's literally on a network like HBO, because those are things that are very crucial, super important, and that just continue to happen. Like it just continues to happen in Inglewood. And it continues to happen even when I was living in South Central LA myself. Like I was noticing lots of different things. As soon as certain families started to move out and other families started to move in, I was like, oh, and then repainting all the complexes and
Mm-hmm.
making sure the streets were cleaned up. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting thing to really see in real time. You're like, y'all didn't
Mm-hmm.
care about this like a year ago. And now all of a sudden there's a deep care. We need a new fence around the pool. What? Nobody even goes in that pool.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was just such an interesting thing to experience, and I think it continues to happen in lots of places. Barrio Logan in San Diego is a really good example of
Mm-hmm.
that happening. Yeah, just very, very interesting. It really does beg the question, where do we go? Where's good enough for us? And then when we make that space good enough for us, why y'all want to take it back? It makes no sense.
I know, I know. It's terrible. I know. I mean, I think that whole question of like where is good enough for us is it's wherever we are.
Yeah.
Wherever we are,
Yes.
we're gonna make it exactly what it. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it reminds me of that quote. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. It's that. I'm like wherever you put us, you
Yeah.
try to put us in the corner, like we're gonna pop off. And
Yes.
it's about also, I think, knowing our power. Again, I think this is why I do what I do. The more that we can tap into our own creative power, I know that I can create any world that feels good for me and for you. And when we do that together, that's when we create these really beautiful communities where I don't need to wait on or depend on these other systems and factors like to come and do the thing, because
Yes.
you don't got it, we got it. You
Yes,
know?
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we're done waiting. We're like well past that point. It's it's what really inspired us and kind of lit a fire under us to start something, because we kept asking the same question over and over again, and we continue to do that. When is this space going to be for us? When is this going to get created
Hmm.
for us? Do we have to do everything? And the answer is just yes. And
Yeah.
for now, it is that until people start to catch on and realize that what it is that we're bringing to the community that we live in is something very beautiful.
Mhm.
So,
Totally.
yep, we
Yeah.
could go on and
So
on.
thank you for doing what you do in your community.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just like, man, I wanted a space where I I went to lots of different, I think, art spaces and community spaces and
Mhm.
healing spaces, right? Like when I was trying to heal from the burnout that was, being a queer woman of color in
Right.
a, public facing profession.
Right.
And time again, I was like, either it feels really unorganized
Mhm.
and I know that my time is valuable and I want the shit to be tight if I'm going to go, like,
Yes.
period.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I deserve nice things. So that's
Right.
one. Or the space would be a white person trying to teach me my own art. And I was like, absolutely not. Couldn't be
Right.
me. Won't be me. No.
Yeah.
I was like, I know that there are plenty of people that look like us that can teach
Yes.
our cultural traditions. And I'm like, we need to be put up on a pedestal too, you
Yes.
know?
Right.
And so I was like, can't find the space.
Right.
Can't find the
Literally.
space.
Yep.
And
Yes.
so I was like, oh, okay, yes, that's something that I want to create. And I want it to feel accessible and like home to anybody that looks like us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. I really appreciate that it exists. And
Mhm.
I'm excited to come when we make our trip to San Francisco.
Yeah.
But on that
Yay.
note, I feel like it's a perfect place to close out. And I would love to give you the chance to let everybody know where they can find you in that art party.
Yes, that art party. We host creative play dates for BIPOC adults to ritualize arts and play as self care. You can find us on Instagram at that art party. Visit our website for all of the good, juicy details about how to bring us to your workplace, corporate gifting, all of the things.
Okay.
www.thatartparty.com. So,
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you
yeah,
so much, Naomi. We loved this conversation. I can't wait for
Yes.
everybody to hear it.
Yes.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. So, as always, as you guys can probably tell, we yap our guests' ear off. Sometimes I'm like, are we talking too much? But we're just really enjoying our time and we're really
Yeah.
enjoying like the connection that we're making with them and what they're sharing. So,
Mhm.
yeah, loved having Naomi on.
Yes.
She's just very open and very knowledgeable. I mean, she used to
Mhm.
be a teacher, so I almost felt you could tell
Yeah.
just by the way that she like presents things. She has
Oh,
numbered points.
yeah.
And the third
Eloquent,
thing, and
articulate.
eloquent.
Yeah, eloquent. Yeah, we love it. And we love that she got a little hood on us.
Mm.
And we can't wait to go visit. I feel like more and more things are bringing us to like very specific like cities. I
I
know at some point we're going to have to visit the East
know.
Coast to see our feminine chaos girlies. I know at some point
Yeah.
we're going to go up north to San Francisco to meet some of the people that we've been talking to up north. So it's going to be
Yeah.
a time. I'm very excited.
As we said, we met her at a event that we went to, and
Mhm.
I mean, being around your daughter already kind of inspires
Mhm.
that. But just doing any kind of inner child work, you start to realize, oh, these things aren't silly. It's what
Right.
makes me me.
Yes. You don't have to feel ashamed. No one should ever make you feel ashamed for doing the things that bring you joy. If you want to color, if you want to watercolor, if you want to go walk outside barefoot, if you want to go run around, those things are not weird. I think that we put, age
Mm,
restraints on certain
yeah.
things so that we are not felt like we are othered by our community or people outside of our communities. And so I really like that that was a huge part of our conversation. The conversation about gentrification came up and how it's
Mm.
very prevalent in so many cities throughout the US, but very specifically in California. And it was all in all such a good time. I'm finding myself proud that I have more examples to share of playfulness and tapping
Yeah.
into my creativity. Whereas before I would answer like, oh, I have to get back into that. Or, oh, I have
Mm.
to start doing that again. Where now, yes, I color. And
Yeah.
yeah, I am in my ceramics class.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's nice to have that reflection period where I'm like, oh, okay, before I used to say that I was going to start doing this. And now I can actually share a story or an experience from when I went and did it.
when I did
So
the thing.
that does feel refreshing, and it kind of speaks to a little bit more of what's in my cup today, as far as feeling grateful that I've been able to have the support system, number one, to be able to do that, the finances to be able to do that, and the time, because time is valuable, as we all know.
As always.
Mm-hmm.
As always, speaking of as always, if you enjoyed this conversation, please let us know. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We would love to read it. We love when you guys tell us what you like, maybe more of what you would like to see. But also, you can follow us at Empathsanonpod, where we're going to put all of our fun clips from this episode. And we'd love to have a conversation with you there, or on YouTube, Empaths Anonymous.
Yeah, we've been loving the response so far. We've got a great response from our visit to Bikakoa Salon, and I think you guys really like us sharing more of kind of what we do outside of the pod.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to schedule more things. She's off jet setting again, so it won't be for like a little while, but just trying to be mindful of when we do go out and do things, to have fun and be present in the moment, but also try to get content and show you guys what is it we're up to outside of the green velvet couch.
Which sometimes isn't much.
And yeah, if you want me
busy.
to record me doing homework for 10 hours, okay.
There are some like aesthetic do homework with me or work with me type of videos.
Yeah, I watch
where they like set up their
YouTube.
And you are like very much a supply girly, so you can show off like
supplies,
like the highlighters, the pens, like your organization system, how you take notes.
Yes,
that could be very aesthetic.
It's true. And we got a new desk and chair for in here, because we use this as a double space, which of course you have to maximize that.
It's kind of a triple space. It's my closet.
That's true.
It's the podcast studio, and it's an office.
And an office space. But yeah, it's really nice. It's like finally coming together and feeling a little bit more like us. So
functional.
Yeah, maybe I will. Honestly, it's been in the back of my mind. What? Doing
UGC?
One of those like a UGC or do homework with me, like study with me type of thing. Because I already listened to the Pomodoros. If you're not onto the Pomodoros, get into the Pomodoros. If you have to work or study or anything for an extended period of time and you need breaks built in for yourself, those are it.
She could be the spokesperson.
I could be a Pomodoro spokesperson.
Honestly.
I do be talking about Pomodoros. But that's it. We don't want to take too long. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, week, night, whenever it is that you're listening to this.
We should pray though.
We should pray.
We haven't in a while, and I feel like we need to get back into the routine.
We do. It's our thing. We should pray. And with that, let us pray. Spirit, grant me the serenity to tap into my imagination,
the courage to play without perfection,
and the wisdom to not read a bitch when she tells my abuelita that she took too long to tailor her pants. And
amen. Go off.
So it is.
And shut down.
Shut down.
Bye.
Bye.